It was a Monday morning, and I was just trying to get through it. I'd stopped at a cafe on the corner near my office, like I do every week, to grab a coffee before heading in. The barista, a young white woman with a nose ring and friendly smile, already knew my order: oat milk latte, no sugar. She was new, but attentive. There was a line behind me, the usual pre-work crowd buzzing on phones and caffeine withdrawal. As I stepped to the side to wait for my drink, a man brushed past me to grab napkins. Tall, mid-50s, white, graying at the temples, wearing one of those tech startup fleece vests over a button-up shirt. He looked like the kind of guy who managed people who manage people. He didn't look at me until he did. He looked at me, and everything in his face shifted. His expression didn't say good morning or even excuse me. It said something else entirely. His eyes narrowed, just for a second, like he was trying to figure out what I was doing there. Like he was assessing a threat he couldn't quite name but still felt. Like the fact that I was a tall black man in a suit and tie, standing alone with a coffee receipt in my hand, was enough to raise internal alarms. And I swear, he reached for his wallet instinctively. Just touched it through his pocket. Like a tick. Like muscle memory. I caught the gesture, him patting his pocket, and I wish I could say it didn't affect me. But it did. I felt that cold flicker in my chest, that internal tightening. The one that says, here we go again. It's the same flicker I feel when I walk into a high-end store and the security guy suddenly finds a reason to restock the front section. Or when I'm waiting for a rideshare and someone double-checks the lock on their car doors as I walk by. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. The body does the talking in these moments. The shuffle away. The glance around to see if anyone else is watching. The forced cough or the sudden interest in a phone screen. I stood there holding a flimsy paper cup sleeve and a receipt with my name on it, waiting for my latte like everyone else. But now I could feel the weight of his suspicion pressing on me, subtle but firm. And I felt smaller. Not because I believed I was a threat, but because I could feel him deciding I was one. And I knew with that old, bitter clarity that if I'd been white, in the same exact clothes, with the same demeanor, the thought of, is my wallet still here, wouldn't have even crossed his mind. When the barista called my name, Andre, I stepped forward to grab the cup. She smiled, handed it over with both hands. Have a good one, she said, like she meant it. I thanked her, but my voice came out quieter than usual. The man was still standing nearby, stirring something into his drink. I noticed how his eyes flicked up as I moved. A little too quickly. Like he was still tracking me. Like I was a loose variable in his morning routine that he hadn't fully accounted for yet. And in that moment, I felt it again, that stupid need to perform harmlessness. To adjust my posture so I looked a little less tall, a little less intimidating. To smile faintly, not too wide, not too direct, but just enough to signal, I'm not who you think I am. That I'm not dangerous. That I'm safe. That I belong. I hate that feeling. That I have to manage someone else's comfort, just because of what they see when they look at me. I took my coffee, turned toward the door, and felt the heat of his gaze on my back like a silent accusation. As I pushed the door open, he spoke. Just a single word. Hey. I turned, surprised. He held up a hand, awkward, halfway between a wave and a signal to stop. You forgot your receipt, he said, holding out a small slip of paper. I blinked. My receipt, the one I'd already had in my hand earlier, was tucked in my pocket. I hadn't forgotten anything, but I took the one he offered anyway, just to avoid whatever scene he was primed for. It wasn't mine. The name on it wasn't mine. I glanced at it, Chad, and then looked back at him. It's not mine, I said, quietly. He looked confused for a second, then annoyed. Oh, he said. Thought it was. His voice had that clipped tone people use when they realize they've made a mistake but don't want to admit what kind of mistake it was. I wanted to say, you didn't think it was mine. You thought I didn't belong here. You thought I needed a reason to be standing where I was, wearing what I was, ordering what I ordered. But I just said, have a good day, and turned back to leave. Outside, the morning sun had started to warm the sidewalk. I took a sip of my coffee and let the bitterness sit on my tongue. It wasn't the espresso, it was something else. A kind of emotional hangover. The kind you get after swallowing your pride, your anger, your disbelief, all in one gulp. I walked slowly, trying not to let it cling to me. But it always does. These moments, these little stabs, they stay with you. Not because they're dramatic, but because they're not. They're ordinary, casual, thoughtless. And that's what makes them so heavy. I kept thinking about his face. That flicker of suspicion. The way it settled into something closer to shame when I corrected him. But not the kind of shame that leads to reflection, just the kind that makes someone defensive. Embarrassed, not sorry. And then I thought about how many times something like this had happened. How I could fill pages with them. Not arrests, not threats, just moments. Invisible to everyone else. Palpable only to the ones they happened to. When I got to the office, I sat in the conference room across from a junior associate, white, fresh out of grad school, who kept calling me sir, even though we were barely 10 years apart. I wasn't in the mood to read into it, but of course I did. You learn to do that, even when you wish you didn't. We were going over some vendor negotiations, and he kept deferring, hesitating before speaking. Finally, he leaned back and said, "You know, you're really articulate." Like, impressively so. He meant it as a compliment, I'm sure. But it hit like static. A familiar dissonance. I smiled, the kind of smile I've learned to master, the polite, unreadable one. And I said, "Thanks." Because I knew if I responded honestly, if I even gently pointed out what he just implied, I'd be the one making it awkward. I'd be the one with an attitude. So instead, I let him think he'd said something nice. But inside, I was tired. Tired of people being surprised that I can speak. That I have a command of language, of ideas. That I belong in the room. It always comes down to that, doesn't it? Belonging. Later that afternoon, I found myself thinking about my dad. I remembered him taking me to the bank when I was 12. He wore his best blazer, polished his shoes. Told me, "You dress how you want to be treated, son." I didn't understand then why he ironed his shirts so carefully, why he stood straighter in certain spaces, why his voice changed in lobbies and offices, rounder, softer, precise. Like he was auditioning for safety. That day at the bank, the teller barely looked at him. Asked to speak to a manager before honoring a simple check deposit. My dad didn't flinch. He smiled, nodded, and waited. But when we got back in the car, he gripped the steering wheel a little too hard, knuckles white. I asked him what was wrong. He just said, "Nothing. Just tired." I get it now. I didn't then. But I do now. It's strange how things like this pile up. Not as memories, but as patterns. A slow layering of moments that teach you how the world tends to see you, before you even speak. Like the time at the department store, when I was 24, shopping for a new suit. The sales associate followed me from rack to rack, pretending to fix hangers, never asking if I needed help. I asked for a fitting room, and he asked if I had a store card, before handing me the tag. Or when I hailed a cab downtown and the driver slowed, then sped off as soon as he saw my face through the glass. It wasn't raining. I wasn't late. I just stood there with my hand half raised, like a fool. Each moment by itself, someone could write off. "Oh, he probably just didn't see you. Oh, maybe they were just being careful." But they don't happen to everyone. They happen to us. They form a rhythm. A beat that plays underneath everything. Quiet. Persistent. And it never really stops. I've had white friends say things like, "Are you sure that's what it was?" when I've told stories like these. They mean well, I think. Or they mean not to accuse. But what they don't realize is, we don't get the luxury of not being sure. When someone looks at you a certain way, when a voice shifts tone mid-sentence, when a space tenses as you enter it, you know. It's not paranoia. It's pattern recognition. I remember once, after a networking event, a colleague asked if I ever felt like people made assumptions about me. I said, "All the time." He laughed, thought I was joking. I wasn't. Because the truth is, I live in a world where I'm often seen before I'm heard. And by the time I speak, someone has already built a version of me in their head. And sometimes, like this morning in the coffee shop, what they build is small, but sharp enough to cut. Later that evening, I was at a dinner with some colleagues from work. Casual place, nothing fancy. One of them, a white woman from HR, leaned in during a lull in conversation and said, with a conspiratorial grin, "You're not like other black guys I've met." I paused, smiled, again. That same practiced smile. I knew what she meant. I always know what they mean. She meant I'm the safe kind. The kind who makes eye contact. Who dresses well. Who doesn't raise his voice. Who knows how to navigate rooms like this. She meant I'm educated. That I speak. Well, that I don't scare her. But what she didn't say, what she'll never have to say, is what makes the others unsafe in her eyes. She doesn't have to unpack her comfort because it was never questioned to begin with. I laughed it off. Changed the subject. Because if I challenged her, the room would have gone quiet, and somehow I'd be the one making it uncomfortable. That's how it works. There's this thing I do, I call it the smile tax. I pay it in elevators, in parking garages, at the grocery store. It's the smile I give to strangers, especially white ones, to ease whatever tension they might not even realize they're carrying. It's not that I'm happy. It's not even that I want to engage. It's that I know what can happen when people feel unsettled by your presence. So I smile. I nod. I use the gentle voice. Because one wrong facial expression too neutral, too serious, and suddenly I'm angry, or aggressive, or hostile, all without saying a word. It's exhausting. To constantly edit yourself. To be aware, always, of the space you take up and how it's perceived. To feel like a walking preemptive apology. Some days I wonder how much of me is really me, and how much is just accommodation. What haunts me most isn't what people say, it's what they don't. It's the manager who never calls me by name, though he knows everyone else's. The security guard who nods at everyone except me. The colleague who jokes about diversity hires, but never when I'm in the room, only just loud enough that I might hear it from down the hall. It's in the pauses, the double takes, the exaggerated politeness that turns into icy distance when I speak with confidence. These moments aren't documented. They don't leave bruises, but they leave something in erosion, of certainty, of comfort, of ease. And it's hard to explain to people who don't live it. You try, and they say things like, maybe it's not about race. Or worse, well, you're doing fine, aren't you? As if success is armor. As if achievement cancels perception. As if being tired of being misunderstood makes you ungrateful. That night, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, loosening my tie, watching myself the way I imagined that man in the cafe had watched me. I tried to see what he saw. A tall black man, late 30s, well-groomed, tired around the eyes, not smiling. Would I have scared him, too? I hate that I even thought the question. Hate that his gaze followed me all the way home, into my head. But that's what these moments do. They burrow. And the worst part? There's no one to confront. No apology coming. No resolution. Just me and my reflection, and the quiet hum of being reminded, again, that how I see myself is never the full picture. Not when someone else has already decided the frame. I'm not angry. Not tonight. Just tired. The man at the cafe wasn't new. He was a node in a network, one small point in a system that teaches people to scan me for danger before they even register my humanity. He looked at me and all he saw was the color of my skin. He made a mistake. Not because I was somebody important. Not because I had a title, or an Ivy League degree, or a resume full of polished wins. He made a mistake because he thought that what he saw was all there was to see. And that mistake? It wasn't his alone. It's a mistake this country keeps making again and again. And the rest of us? We carry the weight of that mistake like a second skin. That's the part no one tells you about being black in a space not built for you. You can do everything right. You can sip your coffee, smile your smile, hold your silence. And still, you are the question mark in someone else's sentence. The shadow they tighten their grip against. The receipt they think you forgot. Not because of who you are, but because of what you remind them of. And the cruelest part? Some days, even you start to forget the difference. It's in the media, in policy, in silence. It's in the way police are trained. The way kids are disciplined differently in school. The way resumes with ethnic names get fewer callbacks. He didn't invent the suspicion in his eyes. He inherited it, practiced it, rehearsed it without knowing he was rehearsing. And I've learned to anticipate it without knowing when it'll strike. That's the thing about racism like this. It's not about bad people doing bad things. It's about ordinary people doing ordinary things under the influence of an extraordinary lie. That some lives are naturally more suspicious. That some bodies don't belong. And every day, in ways big and small, that lie gets confirmed.